Good morning and welcome to this Friday's Trending. You're with me today, as per usual. The show is brought to you in association with Iconic Coffee. Head over to shop.iconic.com and use the code Trending for 10% off. So let's head into the story, shall we? Israeli airstrikes kill at least 80 as Trump talks of turning Gaza into a freedom zone. I don't know what else to say. We don't here at Iconic know what else to say other than the guy is an absolute lunatic. Again, come back to problem, reaction, solution. Violence over the last 48 hours diminished hope that the US president's visit to the Middle East would pause hostilities. If you ever believe that at all, knowing who he was, who he is, who he was brought up round, and who he's controlled by, the fake falling out, the Middle Eastenders, as I call it, with Donald Trump, was clearly terribly acted. I mean, it's Hollyoaks level. And I'm not even talking about early Hollyoaks when it was passable. I'm talking about, 2012 onwards Hollyoaks. Not that I watch Hollyoaks, but you know what I mean. At least 80 people have been killed by Israeli airstrikes and artillery shelling on targets across Gaza as faltering talks on a new ceasefire continue. And Donald Trump said he wanted the US to make the devastated territory that he was behind, and I'll show you how in a minute, into a freedom zone. This freedom zone, of course, is all part of this biblical messianic nonsense. Trump's statement recalled the plan he put forward in February for the US to take control of Gaza to reconstruct it as a luxury, leisure, and business hub, basically a trap for all the evangelicals to go in and be ready to be annihilated on the Mount of Olives. The scheme implied the possible permanent displacement of many or all of the territory's 2.3 million people and triggered global outrage, easy for me to say. And that was back in February. Now, if you wanted to do something like that, you would need a reason for it to have happened. And none of this could have happened without the UK government and others, but primarily the UK and US government funding the terrorist, and I will say that, Zionist state of Israel, not the people, obviously, or the faith. It's the government, Zionist, Sabbatean state of Israel. So on February of this year, Israel a bit strapped for cash after killing millions already, thousands in the last 2 years and going all the way back to the mid-1900s. On the 28th of February this year, on the 28th of February of this year, President Donald Trump approved an over 2.5 billion arms sale to Israel. He's going in as the savior, and he's funded this. He approved a 2.5 billion arms sale to Israel, which included 35,000 MK-84s and Blue 117 bombs and 4,000 Predator warheads. This is on a population who are throwing stones to protect themselves. It's absurd to go in there and say you want it as a freedom zone when you funded the carnage, the killing, the mass murder to the tune of 2.5 billion, and still his followers will follow him off the edge of a cliff with their Kabbalah bracelets. 2.5 billion, and you've got the goal to go in there. You're that much of a maniac. You go in there and talk about making it into a freedom zone. I don't know what else to say. The guy's clearly psychotic, and anyone follow him can excuse 2.5 billion to Israel and the IDF to do this, to mass murder people. After Netanyahu openly said in 2019 that he wanted to fund and prop up, well, not fund, but prop up and keep going Hamas, which I take as funding, as a reason for them not to have a sovereign state, a Palestinian state. I mean, it's quite clear. To say he wanted it as a freedom zone, I don't know what else to say. The guy's clearly unhinged. He's funded the problem, and now he's providing the solution that the US take over it. Really, and everybody knows that the US is controlled on the government level, top government level, by AIPAC and Israel lobby, and have been for a very long time. And as soon as people start to accept this, then we can do something about it. But the UK are culpable as well, as much as the US. But it's clearly been cleared, ethnically cleansed for Donald Trump and his messianic lunatics to go in and take it over and invite the evangelicals in. So they're in the right spot at the right time. And on it goes. He's over there shaking hands with what I believe is a Al-Qaeda terrorist. And his supporters carry on twisting their mind around, trying to figure out how he's playing 48D chess. Well, you tell that to the billions of people that have already died all over the world. But you tell that to the hundreds of thousands of people that have died in Gaza already basically by his hand and his funding. The IDF couldn't do it without the US and UK funding. And the 2.3 million people that are going to be moved out of that territory, their homes. I don't know what else to say about that one. So now we go on to US doctors rewrite DNA of infant with severe genetic disorder in medical first. Now, this is absolutely wonderful. This baby, cute baby, had a rare genetic disorder and they've used gene editing to cure it. So gene editing breakthrough has the potential to treat an array of devastating genetic diseases soon after birth, scientists say. Again, with all of these things, you have a positive and negative. It's whoever gets hold of this technology that we're concerned about. But this is wonderful. So doctors in the US have become the first to treat a baby with customized gene editing therapy after diagnosing the child with a severe genetic disorder that kills about half of those affected in early infancy. International researchers have hailed the feat as a medical milestone, and it absolutely is, saying it demonstrates the potential for treating an array of devastating genetic diseases by rewriting faulty DNA soon after affected children are born. I mean, this is an incredible technology, and what they're able to do with it is wonderful. I was in hospital myself as a child for a very long time, for years, in and out, and you live with this stuff. And the operations that were done on me were very new and boundary pushing and life saving. So that's wonderful to see. We're all concerned about where this sort of technology gets into, knowing where the end goal is for a human being that's androgynous and not quite human as we see it, human 2.0. This involves a technique called base editing. So base editing allows scientists to make changes to single letters of genetic code, while prime editing has been compared to the search and replace function in a word processor, giving researchers the power to rewrite whole stretches of DNA. Together, they have enormous potential. The vast majority of known pathogenic mutations can now be corrected using prime editing or base editing. We're messing with God's code, if you want to call it that. And it's concerning who's going to get hold of this. I think this sort of research has been going on a very long time in some underground facilities, many in New Mexico. And that's where this technology is tested on the children that I believe are never registered and are trafficked. Not to say the techniques can't be used for good, or clearly they are, but what are they really going to be used in the future? This base editing technology, where you are editing the DNA, you're changing the form of a natural human being. Of course, it can be used to save people, and that's a wonderful story, but something to keep our eye on. This technology is becoming the norm now. Base editing, gene editing is becoming the norm now. And obviously, we had the whole thing with the COVID fake vaccines. What were they doing, if anything, to our own genes? We know that behind the technocracy, the transhumanist cult, are the eugenics cult of Julian Huxley and the X Club of Thomas Huxley. We know that it was Julian Huxley that rebranded eugenics as transhumanism. So there's some mental people out there that can get their hands on this stuff. So it's worth keeping an eye on. And that does connect us to our last story for today. Now, this has been posted by journalist James O'Keefe, and he's released never before seen footage from Jeffrey Epstein's private island. Epstein's chalkboard is filled with cryptic words like power, deception, and dark brain. The handwriting appears to match Epstein's own jailhouse letters. Among the books on display, one title stands out: The Satanic Verses by Salman Rushdie. It's not a songbook. The novel has been accused of being Islamophobic, but by some Muslim communities. I mean, we don't know if that's been planted there or anything. Now, what they fail to tell you here, but we'll go through the chalkboard first, is some other information that would suggest that this isn't all that it's been put out there to be. I mean, they've been sitting on this for a while.
And then we go to this chalkboard over here. Now, this chalkboard displayed cryptic words, including the word power, deception, mirror in face, dank brain, among others. Now, the chalkboard's message remains a mystery, and we're hoping that some of you in the audience can help decipher and ascertain what Epstein might be talking about here. This is, again, right after he was arrested. We compared the words on the chalkboard to a note Epstein wrote in his prison cell before his death. Several letters and letter combinations from the note match those on the chalkboard, which leads us to believe they were in fact written by Jeffrey Epstein. And we're not sure what this means, but we're hoping you in the audience can take a look at this and tell us what you think he was trying to say here.
So some of the words on Epstein's chalkboard that was in his personal library are power, I think it's power, deception, by way of deception, plants, appear, music, time, and Aryan looks like it goes there, to dark brain. And time equals DEJ, or Dej. Political is also on there. These are all words put on Jeffrey Epstein's board. Now, I would suggest that that's been done by purpose. And the reason why I've said this, on purpose, not by purpose, terrible English, is because Epstein knew he was going to be raided. We know this. 3 weeks before Epstein was raided, he knew about it. I think it was the FBI that raided him. And we know he knew about this because 3 weeks before, he ordered a 50K ton cement truck to fill in something on the island. What they were, tunnels, underground systems, I'll leave that for you to decide. He was filling in something, but the real knowledge here that fits in is that he knew they were coming for him. He had been tipped off. Of course he had been tipped off. He probably had compromise on many of the agents within the FBI themselves. So whatever he wrote on that board, he knew would be seen by the agents and the media and those filming who would come and raid in 3 weeks' time. He knew that. He wasn't on the island when they raided it. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he was filling in the tunnels before. So my suggestion is those words are not a cryptic thing. I mean, I could be completely wrong, obviously. But my view of that is that that's just a red herring. He's put all these words on there, laughing to himself, the sick psychopath he was, thinking they'll be chasing their tail, trying to decipher this for years to come, when it means absolutely nothing. That's just my take on it. He clearly knew they were coming. So there's two options here. It was either I'm going to leave something as a cry for help and try and drag down some other transhumanist lunatics with me of what we were doing down there in the tunnels, or this is a load of nonsense and it's just going to keep people chasing their tail forever and a day. I would bet on the latter. He knew they were coming. Why would he leave this on the whiteboard? The house is immaculate. When you watch the video, they're walking through through it here, and you can see there's pictures of there's just weird ornaments here, weird, creepy pictures. But we knew he had all this weird art around that's been exposed for ages. So the only real news here, and James O'Keefe has been coming out with this stuff, which hasn't really been giving us anything new. He's just been telling us what we already know. Pam Bondi's been coming out saying Epstein, all the videos they have are just of Epstein abusing young people himself, which is absurd to think that he's only going to keep videos of himself when he's clearly running a compromat ring at the top level. I think it goes far worse, far darker, far deeper there into transhumanism, a much lower level. But really, the house is completely like immaculately kept. So why would he just leave that on the board? So I think we need to question all of these things, question any of this information that's coming out and being exposed and released. He knew they were coming. In my opinion, he's wrote a load of nonsense on a whiteboard to keep people chasing their tail. And this all folds back into everything else we're looking in. So it does all connect. You've got the gene editing technology. Where do you think those tests were conducted to create that technology? And yes, there's a lot of good that comes out of the actual technology, but what's done in destructive ways to get to that point? It's a very dark rabbit hole to go down, but this, I believe, is a red herring and it's leading you off into nothing. There's enough information that they're ignoring in the Epstein case in terms of the islands around Jeffrey Epstein's island, St. Bart's, St. Thomas, and what's going on in New Mexico with all the facilities like Los Alamos National Laboratory and Trementina Base, which is the Church of Spiritual Technology, which is Scientology and Dulce and all of these other underground facilities that are close by to Zorro Ranch. Submarines involved. What are they not telling you? Because they're completely ignoring all of that information. And they're showing you a board with a bunch of cryptic, supposedly, words on it that Epstein knew he would be leaving behind because he'd filled in some tunnels or something with cement 3 weeks prior. So, stay vigilant in that sense. But that's one I'm not believing myself. But I could be wrong. Be interesting to see what comes out of this. So guys, have a lovely weekend. Go out and enjoy if it's sunny, sunshine. I went out last week to a car boot. Hay fever kicked in and I couldn't see any of the car boot stuff. I had to come home. Too hot, too grassy. Hopefully it's nice this weekend for everybody. Get out there, take an antihistamine if you need it. And we'll see you next week. Remember, the show has been brought to you in association with Iconic Coffee. Head over to shop.iconic.com and use the code TRENDING for 10% off. And we will see you again next week. Thank you for all the support from myself and the team here on iconic.com. Take care. Goodbye.